Welcome to the Beverage podcast, the only podcast where we discuss drinking trends with an Asian perspective. I'm your resident host, Sean O, certified beverage specialist and co-founder of the Beverage Academy in Singapore and Malaysia. And here is this month's episode. What's up, my drinking comrades, and welcome back to the Beverage podcast. Today's episode is a special one for me because I'm recording this during my IWC Sake judging trip here in Hiroshima, Japan. And this trip has given me the opportunity to sit down with some of the most important voices in the sake world. And today, I'm joined by someone who probably needs very little introduction to anyone serious about sake, John Gauntner. John is widely regarded as one of the most important English language voices in sake. He is the person behind the Sake Professional course, the Advanced Sake Professional course, Sake Industry News, and of course, the author of Sake Confidential. On a personal note, this is quite full circle for me. I went through both his sake courses back in Japan many years ago. And even before that, when I was still in Singapore Airlines developing myself as a beverage trainer, Sake Confidential became almost like a Bible for me. And I'm not even that much of a reader to begin with. So yes, I may sound a little bit like a fanboy today, but I'll keep that part short. Instead of going too deep into John's biography, I want to use this episode to talk about sake today, where the industry is now, what people outside of Japan still misunderstands, and how sake education has evolved, as well as where the category may be heading next. Let's dive in. John, welcome. And I'll keep the fanboy moment short because this is really quite a full circle moment for me because I did your Sake Professional course, your Advanced Sake Professional course, and that Sake Confidential book was really a major reference for me during my training days. So I really appreciate you coming on air.
Very much my pleasure. Very much my pleasure.
Thank you, Anish, for sharing it. So before we get into the industry, does it ever surprise you how many beverage professionals around the world that you have actually shaped?
I actually don't think about that kind of thing too often. But once in a while, I hear about this person there, this person there, this person here.
Yeah.
Or a brewer will tell me they went somewhere and everybody knew about sake. And he said, well, how do you know all this? He says, oh, we took John's course. So once in a while, it comes back to me. And once in a while, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. But I really don't think about it all that often, to be honest with you. I think that when I started this, I really didn't know what I was getting into or how long I could continue. When I started the course, I knew that what I wanted to do is to actually teach about sake, not manage a company that runs an educational program, right? You do that kind of a thing and you're far away from sake. So I wanted to actually work with it, do it every day. And I started to do that. I says, look, when people stop coming, I'll stop doing it. And people haven't stopped coming.
Yeah. And it's been quite a while, 10, 20 years?
The very first time I did Sake Professional course, it was in Japan. And I believe it was 2003. And I've done it almost every year since then.
Wow.
Sometimes 4 times a year.
4 times?
Sometimes, but
wow.
I've taken a year off here or there.
Okay.
But basically, yeah.
It's good to know a little bit of backstory. I still have your Sake Confidential book at home autographed by you. You probably don't remember signing it. It's been a while. And talking about time and duration compared with 10, 20 years ago, what feels most different about the sake world now?
Again, this is a question that could take a long time to answer because if you want to look at that within Japan, that's one answer. And if you want to look at it outside of Japan, that's another answer. So if you first look inside Japan, things have changed hugely. And the type of sake that brewers are choosing to produce and focus on has pretty much shifted to premium, especially smaller producers. The larger producers, of course, will continue to make they make great premium sake. I need to emphasize that. The big brewers make great premium sake, but they also handle a lot of inexpensive sake. And that market's drying up quickly. So you see a good polarization of premium and then less expensive sake. It's polarizing that way. And that's really accelerated. Furthermore, you can see in the industry how sake consumption just keeps dropping. It's been dropping since 1973.
Yeah.
But what really drops is mostly Futsushu and Honjozo. And premium sake isn't necessarily growing fast, but it's basically flat or growing very slowly. So those are changes within Japan. If you look outside of Japan, again, 20 years ago, nobody really knew much about sake outside of Japan. They weren't that interested. But I really think what changed it all is when wine sommeliers started to get into sake. And that happened because questions appeared on their exams.
Yes.
So they had to study, and then they're like, this is actually pretty good stuff, and it's interesting. And wine sommeliers, what's the word? You can rewind it. What am I trying to say? Very convincing. There's a word in English.
convincing via concepts or?
If they like sake, people are going to listen to them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They have a lot of influential power. And the thing is that wine sommeliers have a whole lot of influence. So if you're in a restaurant and the som says, I know you would usually have this white wine with this, but you got to try the sake. People are going to do it. They'll listen to a som if they trust him or her, and you're going to see more and more people are going to fall in love with sake. So that's a huge thing that's changed outside of the industry. Furthermore, at least in the United States, but I think all over the world, sake is much more available at many more places than it used to be. And those changes are showing a lot of growth of export and a lot more interest in sake. Those are the things that have changed a lot in the industry.
Yeah, interest has increased, but do you think consumers have become more informed, or do you feel that not so much?
Absolutely, consumers have become a lot more informed. However, we've just scratched the surface. There's still so many consumers that have no idea what sake is and have no interest whatsoever. So there's still a lot of work to do. We've made a whole lot of progress in making sake popular around the world, for sure, but really we've just dented the surface.
Good to know. Now, you follow the industry very closely through Sake Industry News, which we've briefly talked about, and I'm subscribed to it. I highly recommend anybody who is interested in sake to subscribe to that. It's one of the many reasons why I think I'm still up to date with some of the sake news and happenings. Now, for those who are outside of Japan, it is not always easy to understand what is really happening on the ground. So what would you describe the current mood among Japanese sake breweries?
I think a lot of them are quite concerned about the future of sake for a lot of reasons. One is that Japanese people just aren't drinking sake anymore as much as they used to. And of course, that's huge because that's going to make consumption drop. But the truth is that, at least in Japan and maybe everywhere, people are drinking less and less alcoholic beverages. I recently saw stats in an industry publication that I read that show that every single category of alcohol in Japan had dropped in consumption. The only silver lining was that sake decreased the least. In other words, the least amount of people gave up on sake.
That's good to know.
It is good to know. But things are still contracting in Japan. And they will eventually stabilize. What you're really seeing is mostly lower-end sake contracting and higher-end sake stabilizing. But if 60% of the market contracts, the entire market is going to contract.
Yeah, definitely.
If the brewing industry learns how to adapt and do maybe make adjacent products or other ways to stay profitable and stay as proper enterprises, things will be okay. But the other thing is there's other concerns, and those include, for example, rice prices, right? And rice farmers need to make more money or they can't survive. Without subsidies right now, they wouldn't survive. But if rice gets much more expensive, then brewers can't afford to, they'll have to buy the rice, and then they'll have to raise prices, and consumers will move away from them again. So there's concerns like that on top of it. And then there's other stuff like tariffs, their own costs. For example, rice isn't the only thing any more expensive, right? Fuel is, equipment is, wages are. The sake industry in Japan has always been a tough business, but I think a lot of breweries are worried about the future right now.
So it's more cautious rather than optimistic, I suppose.
For the most part. But there are a lot of brewers and sectors about which there's a lot of optimism. For example, sparkling sake. It's a very small part of the market. And it's not nearly to, sparkling sake isn't nearly to the sake industry, or for example, sparkling wine and champagne are to the wine industry. Not even close.
Yeah.
It'll take years if it ever approaches that at all. But still, it's a bright spot in what's happening. And you do see some younger people going back to it, and sake is getting better and better, right? And another thing that's changed is the infrastructure. I rarely in the past would I ever see a sake I'd never heard of. But these days, there's so many brewers in the countryside that never got out of it. Their sake never left the countryside. But now you can get it on the internet, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, these sakes I never heard of, and it's exciting to get out there and check them out. So that's, I think, some optimistic aspects of it as well.
Good to know. More pertaining to the people who are outside of Japan, we usually view sake as premium bottles, beautiful labels, sommeliers that are introducing them to it. Now, with all these very polished stories, what do you think the international market often misunderstands about the reality of the sake industry inside of Japan?
Yeah, it's not all about ginjo and daigin. Junmai isn't any better than non-junmai, and the seimai buai is not something you should put too much importance on. Everybody likes to look at that number and make decisions based on that. Everybody likes to go for the ginjo right away, and it's easy, it's approachable. I mean, even in my own teaching, I say, look, if you want to remember just one word, let it be ginjo. But don't remember just one word, learn a few more. So yeah, I think that there's a misconception that the only sake worth drinking is Daiginjo or Junmai Daiginjo. Yeah. And that's most definitely not the truth. And I think there's a misperception that all you really need to know is the rice polishing rate. And no, that's definitely not true either.
Yeah. I think to draw a reference to the movie Sideways,
Yeah, I have seen it.
you've seen it. In some way or form, you define that because for a very long period of time, whoever I ask about sake and we talk about sake, who are just getting into it and they know who you are, you define that. They remember that if I only need to remember about sake is the ginjo, that stuck. You evolve over time the teachings. You did mention, okay, please remember to learn more. But that kind of stuck,
In a lot of people's minds.
Yeah,
So you're saying it's my fault?
not exactly, not exactly. And I can see that, well, you're not making up for it, but you're definitely making an effort to help change the industry, which I think will come eventually.
It will. Just to add a bit more about that, and I hope I don't sound defensive, but the whole point was, if I sit someone down, hey, what is this sake stuff? Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah.
And I explain Seimai Buai and Junmaisho and Honjozo and Daiginjo and all these, they're not listening to me. And they're going to walk out of there and they're going to go buy another bottle of wine or a 6-pack of IPA or something like that. But if I say one word, ginjo, for now, just remember that. They'll go out, they'll get one. Yeah, this stuff's pretty good.
Yeah.
They'll come back for another glass. And then the guy behind the bar will say, well, there's a lot more sake out there than just ginjo, daiginjo. Try this one. Oh yeah, what's the rice policy? Oh, is that right? So it's a hook.
Absolutely.
I think it's doing more good than harm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that. I brought up that point because it just shows how much of sway you have in terms of the things you say. Yeah.
And now I have to be more cautious.
With great power comes great responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about sake education. It has grown tremendously. Today, there's so many courses, certifications, books, masterclasses, podcasts, that sort of thing. From your perspective, what have we improved in sake education and what can educators still get wrong?
The first thing is what we've improved upon is just basic understanding of what sake is and how good it can be and the diversity of styles. I think a lot of people may have 20 years ago thought that they make it from rice. It all tastes the same as now. And education has taught about the different types and the different yeasts and the different rices and how those could all combine and intertwine to give you a variety, a huge variety of sake out there. So education has definitely contributed to basic understanding that makes sake more approachable. What I think it hasn't done right is that...
Do you think we have educators become too technical to the point whereby it might put somebody off or...
No, I don't think so. I think educators can be as geeky as they want to, as long as they present in such a way and teach in such a way that says, you don't really need to know this, but this is out here too if you want to geek out. This is what you really need to know to enjoy sake tonight and tomorrow and next week. But there's a lot more if you ever get that interested in it. Obviously, I don't know how every educator and every educational system works, but I think most are pretty much covering both of the bases. They're doing a good job of that.
Okay, good to know. Sake Confidential, the book that you've written, and it's still very relevant to today. I read it so many times. Before I started at sake education, like formally, that was my Bible.
Wow.
To just understand a little bit more about sake, so I highly recommend people to read it. If you wrote that book today, would there be any changes? What would you update or add?
I hope this doesn't disappoint you or your listeners, but I don't think I'd change very much at all. I did what I wanted to do with that book. I kind of made things simpler. I diffused misperceptions, right? Are there new things out there? Yeah, there's a couple I might add. I'm sure there's a couple things I might add. Maybe some things about modern yeast versus traditional yeasts, or what people were enjoying 30 or 40 years ago before ginjo was a popular thing, and how that's very approachable too. And if I sat down with a book and looked through it, I'd probably find another 5 or 6 things to change. For the most part, I like it the way it is. And any writer will rewrite their own work 100 times. So there's also that.
It's true, but I find it very readable. And I think that was the easy part that got me on board, because reading a textbook puts you to sleep. I can speak for most students that we have at the academy, but reading your book kind of feels like it's a conversation with you. Although
that's cool.
Yeah, although it's not really a two-way dialogue, but it's
Definitely.
yeah.
That's very cool.
I can almost hear you talking when I'm reading the book. I think it bridges that gap, which is great. Structured learning versus self-learning, because again, there's so much resource out there. There's freaking ChatGPT, right? Gemini, whatever not. With so much of information that's online now, what does proper structured education still give students that self-learning cannot?
I think priorities in learning objectives is one thing, and then a good, controlled, regulated, logical flow to the material. So in other words, if you started the sake and all of a sudden the first thing you learned about was Kimoto Zukuri, you'd be out of order. You couldn't follow that. Yeah. And if you all know what Kimoto is, they talk about this or that lactic bacteria and then pole ramming, and you're like, okay, but you don't have the background for everything to understand how significant that is. If you get good structured learning, we go one thing at a time, right? And by the time they start to talk about Kimoto, they just say, yeah, it's related to the yeast starter stage or the moto stage. And everybody's on board with you. And remember we told you 3 ingredients for rice water and koji, well, they actually lack lactic acid, unless it's Yamaha Kimoto. And then people are like, oh, wow, cool. So if you do it in a structured learning format with an experienced teacher who's practiced that, then you can get a lot more information you can convey a lot more information. You can put a lot more information in their heads, make it a lot easier to understand a lot more information because of the controlled flow and tempo.
Yeah. I'll add to that because I'm a bit of a product from your professional program. I think being more immersive in the program actually helps being able to see. When I partake in your sake professional course as well as the advanced, being able to go on a field trip, having people explain it was very different as opposed to sitting in a classroom. Sure. I'm not selling myself short. Being in a classroom and teaching from a textbook, it's one thing to do that and then to actually have that experience going out and immersing yourself. And then at the end of the day, you still get a good time having dinner with lots of sake. I still remember the time where, whereby, oh my gosh, I think I almost got drunk on it, which is great. I'm not trying to sell the whole idea of getting drunk on course, but you get my point, right?
I do, absolutely.
Yeah. Sake trends. I think that's another thing that we need to talk about. Now, of all the current trends that you're seeing, sparkling, low alcohol, aged sake, luxury blended sakes, which ones do you think matter most, especially to this period of time?
It's a good question.
And take your time.
Yeah. The ones that matter the most are the ones that hold the most potential for long-term growth and are not going to disappear in 5 or 6 years. So I think the trends toward Kimoto and Yamaha are one of those, simply because, number one, I think brewers enjoy using the old traditional methods. And so they're having more fun.
Yeah.
And those of us that like Kimoto and Yamaha have more of that available to us. It also shows another cultural aspect of sake. But not everybody's into Yamaha and Kimoto. I think the trend of the return to warm sake, I think, has been around probably about 25 years now. And that's a good one too. Again, because it's traditional and opens up a whole new, realm of sake, right? Enjoying warm sake, premium warm sake. But it's a bit geeky. And also, you kind of have to have the right equipment.
Yeah. Or even the right environment.
Yeah.
I'm just adding on to your point. I think Kanzake has a market, but if I was talking about places like Singapore, it's freaking hot and humid.
No, right.
Yeah. So I think it really depends.
Sure it does.
But when it comes to pairing, I feel things like a soup dish or broth, that makes more sense.
A lot of things do. Pairing with warm beverages isn't something we typically do in the West anyway.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we can't learn, and it doesn't mean it can't be enjoyable.
Yeah.
But again, it's not something with which I think a lot of people in the West anyway have familiarity. But I think it holds potential. There was another trend that matters the most. Basically, trends I think that will still be around in 10 to 20 years are what are important.
What about the ones that actually excite you personally? Yeah. That you're actually looking forward to, or you've noticed it and think that, hey, I think this is probably something that even you are personally invested in because I think you see the upside to it. Do you think low alcohol is something that might be interesting, or?
I think it's got a future.
It's got a future?
Yeah, I think it'll grow. I'm not terribly excited about it, but that's just a personal preference. There's not that many of them out there yet for me to get excited about. I tend to like slightly higher alcohol temperature, but their brewers are making a lot of efforts and succeeding in making good lower alcohol sake. So I think that's one we could look forward to, even though I'm not particularly that interested in lower alcohol sake.
Okay, good to know. We're coming to a close. After all these years of writing, teaching, tasting, judging, following the industry, what is one thing you wish more people would understand about sake?
Yeah, that would be the incredible craftsmanship that goes into it and the incredible attention to detail that goes into making good sake. If you go and visit a sake brewer and you see them measure things with a stopwatch, or like when a toji is moving stuff around and if one bag touches the ground, it's now, get it out of here, right? Or the way a brewer can look at rice or koji in his hand or her hand and assess how far the mold has grown and thereby know what the enzyme content is just by looking at it, right? The incredible craftsmanship and attention to detail just makes people shake their head and say, man, sake brewing is just crazy. That's what I wish more people understood.
Yeah. think it was a reference to Kikuyoe, was it?
Yeah, when he looks at his hands.
Yeah, and I actually picked that up from you, and I actually appreciate the fact that we don't actually need machinery, just experience, and somehow he knows that there is,
how much the water's absorbed just by looking at it.
Exactly.
And I remember he said, it's not that hard, but you just have to do it every day. So it's just a commitment to those things.
It becomes muscle memory eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. John, thank you so
very
much for joining me. On a personal level, this is really, again, a full circle moment. Your courses, your writing played a huge role in shaping how I am today, as well as how I understand sake. So I appreciate the fact that you're on air talking about it. And I'm sure I won't be the only one. More people will get to know about the work that you're doing. I wish you all the best. I hope you churn out more information and content, and I'm looking forward to listening to the next episode.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
John. I appreciate your time today. Thanks very much. All right. Thanks. That was fun.
For my drinking comrades listening in, if you are serious about sake, do check out John's work, especially Sake Wall, Sake Industry News, his sake courses, and of course, Sake Confidential. We'll include the links to John's work in the episode caption, so you can easily follow his updates, explore his courses, and deep dive into the world of sake. I personally subscribe to Sake Industry News, and it's one of the ways I keep myself updated when I'm on the go. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, subscribe, and share it with someone who wants to level up their sake knowledge. You can also drop me your comments and questions on my Instagram at SoThirstyTraveler, that is so.thirsty.traveler with a single L. Till the next episode, kanpai, my drinking comrades.